3 years ago, I saved a stranger's life. He ended a man's life for me yesterday. I never asked for repayment, but when I saved him that night, I didn't realize the price I'd eventually pay. 3 years later, a man is gone because of me, or perhaps because of the debt I never knew I owed. And now there's no going back. My name is Alex. I'm 38 years old and I've been a doctor for over a decade. I'd always thought I led a relatively simple life, a life I could be proud of. I had my family, a wife, Maria, who was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner, and our daughter, Sophia, who was the center of my world. I had a job that I loved, working long hours at the city hospital, and though it was demanding, it kept me busy. Everything seemed balanced, but as the months went by, I began to realize that nothing in life is as simple as it seems. 3 years ago, it all started. It was a cold night in late November, the kind of night when the air stung your skin and the wind whispered through the trees, carrying with it a promise of something darker. I had just finished my shift at the hospital, exhausted and eager to get home. The streets were quieter than usual, the city's usual hum softened by the chill in the air. I was driving along the main road when something caught my eye, a figure barely visible in the dim streetlights, lying on the side of the road. It was strange. The shape was slumped over, not moving, and I could feel a chill run down my spine. But there was something else about it, something that didn't feel right. I drove past, my eyes fixed on the rearview mirror. A sudden impulse pulled at me, forcing me to slow down, then stop. I turned the car around and parked by the curb. My instincts as a doctor took over, and I rushed toward the man, my breath fogging in the air. He was unconscious, his skin pale, his body shivering. I checked his pulse, relieved to find it weak but steady. I immediately pulled out my phone and dialed for an ambulance. But when I looked closer, I saw something that made my heart race. His clothes were ragged, and his face was barely recognizable, hidden beneath layers of dirt. But there was something else, a stark emptiness in his expression, the kind you don't often see outside the walls of hospitals. I don't know why I acted the way I did. Maybe it was because I was a doctor, or maybe it was just a gut feeling that told me he needed help more than anything else. I didn't wait for the ambulance. I called in a favor from a colleague, and within minutes we were on our way to the hospital. I arranged for him to be admitted for emergency care, and I paid for his treatment myself. No questions asked. The man, whose name turned out to be Michael, was in bad shape. He had frostbite, a high fever, and multiple bruises from what looked like a beating. But he pulled through. We got him stable, and I personally saw to it that he was placed in a shelter after his recovery. That night, as I watched him leave the hospital, I thought about the kind of life he had been living. A life in the streets, a life I couldn't fully understand. I didn't expect to see him again. 3 months passed. Life went back to its normal rhythm. But every once in a while, I'd think back to that night. I never heard from Michael, and I assumed he had moved on, found his way, or simply faded into the background of my life. I never imagined that 3 years later, the man I'd saved would come back to me. And when he did, it would not be in the way I expected. Now, 3 years later, I was sitting at my desk at the hospital, going through patient charts, trying to make sense of the chaos around me. Work had been piling up for days, and I had barely noticed the passage of time. I glanced up, and for a moment, everything felt off. The hospital was buzzing as usual, nurses darting in and out of rooms, patients calling for attention. But something in the air felt different. There was an undercurrent of tension, something I couldn't quite put my finger on. At first, it started with little things, anonymous threats that came through the hospital's administration. Threats aimed at me. Vague and ominous, but still, they were unsettling. Then came the phone calls. A few strange voices, none of them familiar. They didn't say much, just threats that hinted at something I couldn't understand. And then there was the fire. I had parked my car at the hospital garage just like I always did. But when I came out after my shift one night, I found my car engulfed in flames. The fire department was already there, trying to put it out. The first thought in my mind was that it was some kind of accident, but deep down I knew it wasn't. Someone was after me. I tried to shake off the growing sense of dread, but it only intensified with each passing day. Things at home weren't much better. Maria noticed it too. She saw the worry in my eyes, the way I kept checking the locks at night, the way I jumped at every phone call. She didn't understand it, and I couldn't explain it. And then there was Sophia, the near accident. I was driving her home from school when it happened. A car came out of nowhere, speeding toward us. The brakes squealed, and the driver veered off course, missing our car by inches before speeding away. I swerved to avoid the crash, my heart pounding in my chest. It was too close, too deliberate. Someone was trying to hurt my family. It was on that very night that I saw him, the man I had saved standing at the edge of the street, as if he had always been there, waiting. I couldn't believe my eyes. The scruffy, homeless man who had been lying on the road 3 years ago was now clean-shaven, wearing a tailored suit, looking like someone who belonged in a boardroom, not on the streets. He stepped toward me slowly, his eyes locking onto mine with an intensity I couldn't understand. "Do you remember me?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. I nodded, still processing the surreal nature of the situation. "Now," he said, his lips curving into a small, knowing smile, "it's my turn to save you." But the way he said it, the way he looked at me, made my blood run cold. This wasn't the kind of help I had imagined. The night I saw Michael again, I didn't know what to think. I was still reeling from the near miss with Sophia and the fire that had nearly claimed my car, and now here he was, a man I had once helped, appearing out of nowhere. I didn't have the luxury of being confused for long, though. There was a strange, unsettling calm in his eyes, a quiet certainty that unnerved me. "I don't know what you mean," I said, still struggling to understand what was happening. "I don't need saving. I'm just, I'm just trying to protect my family." Michael's gaze never wavered. "No," he said softly, "you don't understand. They're coming for you. And when they do, there's nothing anyone can do to stop them, unless you know how to fight back." I didn't know what to say. His words felt out of place, like a threat wrapped in a riddle. He wasn't acting like the man I had once pulled from the edge of death. There was something cold in his demeanor now, something that made my skin crawl. "Who's coming for me?" I asked, my voice quieter now. Michael's eyes flickered toward the street, as if expecting someone. The air seemed to shift. The wind grew colder, and the street lights around us flickered, an eerie sign of something wrong. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was no one around. The city felt strangely still, as if it were holding its breath. "I'll explain later," Michael said. "Right now you need to trust me. You and your family, they're in danger. You have to stop pretending that everything is fine. I know what's going on, Alex. I know who's behind this." I didn't know what to think. Who was this man now, and why was he telling me this? "Who are you, really?" I asked, my voice tinged with a mix of fear and confusion. Michael paused before answering, a small, cryptic smile on his face. "I told you once that I owed you my life. Now I'm here to repay that debt. But the price you're going to pay, Alex, might be higher than you think." Before I could respond, he turned and walked away. His footsteps were deliberate, confident, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. I stood there for a moment, frozen in place. The air felt colder, and for the first time in days, I wondered if this was all leading somewhere darker than I could have imagined. The next few days were a blur of escalating events. The threats against my family had taken a more direct turn, and each day felt like a struggle just to stay one step ahead of the people behind it all. The police had done little to help, and I was left in the dark about the identity of those trying to destroy my life. Whoever they were patient, calculated, and they were not going to stop until they had what they wanted. At the hospital, things were no better. My colleagues were beginning to notice the toll the pressure was taking on me. The threats, the vandalism, the unsettling feeling that something was always watching, it had become unbearable. It wasn't just my family that was in danger anymore. It was everything I had worked for. One afternoon, while I was checking on a patient in the emergency room, I got a call from Maria. Her voice was frantic, something I had never heard before. "Alex, you need to come home now. It's Sophia. She's—" The line went dead. Panic rose in my chest as I dropped the phone. My mind raced. Sophia? What had happened? Had the threats finally caught up with her? I didn't waste another second. I rushed out of the hospital, ignoring the concerned calls from my colleagues. As I sped through the streets, my mind was consumed by fear, but also something else, a growing realization that this was no accident. This was part of the plan. I wasn't just being targeted, my family was. And whoever was behind this wasn't going to stop until they had destroyed everything I cared about. When I arrived home, I found Maria pacing in the living room, her face pale and strained with worry. "Sophia's upstairs," she said, barely able to hold back tears. "She's fine, Alex, but there was a man outside, a black car. I saw it drive away just before I called you." I turned quickly, rushing toward the stairs. As I passed Maria, I noticed her hands were trembling. The tension in the air was thick, but there was something else, something that didn't belong in my home, a sense of unease that chilled me to the bone. Sophia was in her room, curled up on her bed, her eyes wide with fear. She looked at me with a mix of confusion and terror. "Daddy," she whispered, "I don't know what's happening. I heard footsteps, and then I saw someone through the window. They were watching me." I took a deep breath and sat beside her, trying to calm my nerves. "It's okay, sweetheart. We'll keep you safe. I promise." But as I held my daughter in my arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Then, just as I thought I might have a moment to collect myself, I heard the doorbell ring. I opened the door, and there he was. Michael. He looked different. Gone was the suit from the previous night. Now he wore something more practical, a dark coat, gloves, and a look that said he wasn't here to chat. "We need to talk," he said, stepping past me without waiting for an invitation. "And you need to listen, Alex. Your family's life is at stake." I didn't have time to argue. "What's going on? Who are these people?" "They're not just anyone," Michael said, "and they're not going to stop until they have you. But it's not you they want. It's the people you love." I felt the weight of his words settle in my chest, pressing down harder with every second. He wasn't here to save me. He was here to save them. But from what? And at what cost? I couldn't shake the feeling that the world around me was slipping through my fingers. The threat against my family was becoming all too real, and the more I learned, the less I understood. I had spent so many years focused on medicine, saving lives, that I never imagined I would be caught in the crosshairs of something like this. But now there I was, caught in a dark game where the rules weren't clear and survival was far from guaranteed. Michael didn't wait for me to ask any more questions. He walked into the living room, his eyes scanning the space with a practiced, almost clinical gaze. "We don't have much time," he said, his voice low yet firm. "They're coming for you, Alex, and they'll stop at nothing." I didn't know what to say. It was hard to believe that the man I had once saved was now telling me my life was in danger. But there was something in his eyes, something that told me he wasn't lying. "I don't understand," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "Who are these people? Why us?" Michael took a deep breath, as if he had been expecting me to ask. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I wasn't just some homeless guy, Alex. I wasn't just a random man you saved by the side of the road. I was someone important, or I used to be. I was an informant, working for the authorities, trying to bring down one of the biggest mafia syndicates in the country. I had information that could destroy them. But when they found out, they made sure everyone thought I was dead." I stared at him, my mind trying to process the information. It was like something out of a movie, too absurd to be real. "You're telling me," I said slowly, "that you were involved with the mafia, and now they're after me because of something I did. Saving you?" Michael nodded gravely. "Yes, they don't care about me anymore. I've been hiding, keeping a low profile, and they thought I was dead. But now they've realized I'm still alive. And they've come for you, Alex, to try and flush me out. They're using you and your family as bait. They think they can force me into a corner by targeting everything I care about." I took a step back, trying to absorb what he was saying. My life had been turned upside down in a matter of days, and now Michael, the man I had helped without question, was telling me that my family was caught in the crossfire of a deadly game I hadn't even known existed. "So what do we do?" I asked, my voice filled with uncertainty. How do we stop them? Michael's eyes flickered with a dark intensity. We don't stop them, not directly. What I'm going to do is take the fight to them, and I need your help. My heart pounded in my chest as I considered his words. This wasn't a game anymore. This was real. If Michael was right, and these mafia men were targeting my family, there was no way out except to confront them head on. Help you? I asked, my voice a mix of confusion and disbelief. How do you expect me to help you? I'm just a doctor. I've never done anything like this. Michael smiled darkly. You'll help me because you owe it to your family. Because they've already hurt you, Alex. They've already made their move. This isn't just about you anymore. It's about Sophia, about Maria. You need to understand something. They'll come for your family whether you fight back or not. The only difference is whether you're standing when they do. I felt a chill run down my spine. His words were harsh, but they carried a truth I couldn't deny. If I didn't act now, I might lose everything I had worked for, everything I loved. I swallowed hard, trying to find the courage to make a decision that would alter my life forever. What do you need me to do? Michael's gaze hardened. We're going to lure them out, Alex. We're going to make them think they have the upper hand. They'll come for us, and when they do, we'll hit them hard. I took a deep breath, the weight of the situation settling in. My mind raced through the options, none of them good. But Michael was right. The alternative was letting them hurt my family. Let them win, and I couldn't allow that. Over the next few days, Michael and I worked together, planning each move carefully. He had resources, connections, things I didn't fully understand. But as the days passed, it became clear that he wasn't just any man who had been down on his luck. He was a former player in a deadly game, and now he was pulling me into it. He didn't reveal much about the mafia or their operations. I didn't need to know the details, he said. All I needed to know was that they were powerful, ruthless, and they wouldn't stop until they got what they wanted. I've spent years staying under the radar, he said one evening as we sat in my living room, making plans. But they've found me, Alex, and they won't stop until they have me, or until they have you. I was becoming more and more entwined in this world I had no place in. But the longer I stayed silent, the closer the danger got. So I did what I had to do. I helped Michael. I set up meetings with contacts I didn't trust, worked late into the night trying to decipher the threats against us, and began making preparations. But with every step forward, I realized something else. Something that sent a shiver down my spine. Michael wasn't just trying to save me or my family. He was using me to settle a score. This was personal. And it wasn't just about the mafia anymore. It was about something darker, something that Michael had been holding on to for years. I could feel it now, the weight of everything that had led to this moment. And in the back of my mind, I kept asking myself, was I just a pawn in his game, or had I become something worse? The days blurred into one another. Tension hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating everything around me. The plans we had set in motion with Michael were moving forward, but the stakes had grown higher with every passing hour. I had become someone I barely recognized, an unwilling participant in a deadly game, caught between protecting my family and repaying a debt I had never fully understood. Michael was always there, a steady presence in the chaos, but his cool demeanor only seemed to make the situation more terrifying. He never showed fear, never wavered. But I could sense something dark behind his actions, a depth to his resolve that made me question everything. We had set the trap. The mafia had taken the bait. They thought they were about to get the upper hand, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. It all came to a head one night. I was sitting in my living room, watching over Sophia as she slept, when Michael arrived. He didn't knock, didn't announce himself. He simply walked in, his face set in stone, his eyes unreadable. "It's time," he said, his voice low and steady. I stood up immediately, heart racing. This was the moment where everything I had been through, everything we had worked for, would either end in triumph or destruction. "We're ready?" I asked, trying to mask the fear in my voice. Michael nodded. "It's too late to back out now. They'll be here within the hour." I swallowed hard. There was no turning back. My family was in this now, whether they knew it or not. I had made a choice, and I was going to see it through. But deep down, a voice kept whispering, had I made the right choice? We moved quickly. I left a note for Maria, telling her to stay inside and lock all the doors. I knew she'd be terrified when she found out what was happening, but there was no time for explanations. If we were going to survive, we had to act fast. Michael led the way as we moved through the house, setting up our defenses. He had an arsenal of weapons stashed away, guns, knives, tools I didn't know how to use. I had never been trained for this, but Michael had prepared me for it. As the minutes passed, the atmosphere grew heavier. The house felt smaller, the walls pressing in around me. My heart pounded as I thought about Maria, about Sophia, about what was at stake. And then, finally, the sound I had been waiting for, the crunch of tires on gravel outside. They're here, Michael said, his voice cold. Get ready. I gripped the gun Michael had handed me, feeling the weight of it in my hands. I didn't know if I was ready for this, if I was ready to take a life to protect mine. But I couldn't think about that now. My family's lives were on the line. That was all that mattered. We crouched low, moving toward the door leading to the garage. Through the windows, I could see the shadowy figures approaching. The mafia men had arrived. Michael held up a hand, signaling for me to stay still. I did, watching in silence as he prepared to make his move. His face was unreadable, but I could see the focus in his eyes, the determination. The door creaked open, and then it was all chaos. The men burst in, armed and ready for a fight. But they hadn't expected Michael. They hadn't expected the level of preparation that had gone into this moment. As soon as the first man stepped through the door, Michael fired, and the room erupted into noise and movement. I froze for a moment, watching Michael take out the first man with a single shot. His movements were smooth, practiced. It was clear that this wasn't the first time he had done this. He was in his element, and I was just trying to keep up. Move! He shouted, grabbing me by the arm and pulling me toward the back door. I followed him, my heart hammering in my chest. The fight had only just begun. We weren't out of danger yet. As we made our way through the house, I heard the sounds of more men coming. They were closing in. But Michael wasn't panicking. He was calm, methodical, almost like a shadow moving through the chaos. We reached the back of the house, where Michael had set up a hidden escape route. He pushed me through the door, his hand firmly on my back as he ushered me outside. But just as we were about to slip away into the night, one of the mafia men appeared, blocking our path. Going somewhere? He sneered, leveling a gun at Michael. I barely had time to think before Michael moved. In a flash, he disarmed the man and had him pinned to the ground. The man struggled beneath him, but Michael was relentless. You don't get to choose when this ends, Michael said, his voice cold. Not today. With a quick, decisive motion, he ended the man's life. It was over in an instant, but I felt the weight of it like a stone in my chest. Come on, Michael said, pulling me away. We're not done yet. We didn't stop running until we reached the safe house Michael had prepared. There we took a breath, a brief moment of respite. But as I looked around, I couldn't help but feel something else. Something was off. You know, Michael said, his voice quieter now, you don't owe me anything anymore. You've helped me more than I could have ever asked. I glanced at him, not sure what he meant. I don't understand. He smiled faintly. The thing is, Alex, I didn't just want to save you. I wanted to make sure you understood the cost of what you were getting into. This is the life I lead, and now you're part of it. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach. I had thought I was helping Michael, repaying him for saving my life. But now it felt like I was being dragged into a world I didn't belong in. Michael stood up, walking toward the window. I'm leaving soon. There's nothing left for me here. I stood frozen, unsure of what to say. My world had changed in ways I hadn't expected. The man I had saved was now leaving, and I was left with the wreckage of everything that had happened. Alex, Michael said, turning back toward me, you've done your part. But remember, some debts are never fully paid. And with that, he disappeared into the night, leaving me to pick up the pieces of a life I had almost lost. The next day, I heard that the mafia syndicate had been completely dismantled. The men who had threatened my family were gone. The police found evidence linking them to numerous illegal activities, but there was no sign of Michael. He had vanished, as if he had never existed. And as I looked at my family, safe and sound, I realized one thing. The life I had saved was not just mine. It was also my family's. But in the end, I wondered if I had truly saved them, or if, in some twisted way, Michael had just saved me.